so that people who are interested in internationalization, they find the opportunity to connect to Berlin through the hub as well. So that would be the idea, my idea for the hub that will be opened next year, and hopefully it will go on for the next 20 years, connecting Berlin to Jakarta.
Hi, hello, my name is Wiki Adrian. Welcome to the podcast Future City Talk from one of the hottest or most dynamic spot in South Jakarta called Kuningan. And talking about the Future City Talk, this is the program that open discussion with multiple stakeholders, including government, international experts, startups, influencers, in discussing topics related with entrepreneurship ecosystem in Jakarta and of course Berlin. And this time our speaker will be coming to you from Berlin. And in this episode we will talking about the topic of collaboration, and together with me today virtually we have Dr. Rainer Seder of Berlin Government Senate. Hi sir, how are you?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm fine. I wish to be in Jakarta now, because I used to travel once a year to Jakarta, and it's a very pity that it's not possible. But it's okay. It's not as warm as in Jakarta, but so it's getting towards Christmas. We have 0 degree, but it's okay. We are used to that.
Yeah, hopefully you're doing okay with your loved ones. And talking about our topic today, talking about the collaboration, how and why actually collaboration drive innovation in startup or entrepreneurial ecosystem.
So I think it's important to know what's happening around the world from a startup perspective. So if you want to be an innovative startup, it's necessary to look also abroad, not only what's happening within your home country, and that's one of the first reasons to go international from a startup perspective, to know what's happening from Berlin perspective, what's happening in Asia, what's happening in Indonesia, in Jakarta especially, and because it's very important to get a real creativity and to find solutions that should improve the world in a way, and of course you can't do that from a Berlin perspective only. So it's important to get international impressions and collaborations with partners in other countries, and of course from our perspective, Indonesia and Jakarta in ASEAN is one of the hot spots we have to consider.
So talking about international cooperation, how has international cooperation take role in building bridge between Asia and Europe ecosystem? Can you share any case studies of a program or event related to this?
Yes, of course, we have a couple of events related to this, and we have branded these with the name Asia Berlin. Of course, for us, it's Berlin in the focus on the European side, and Asia it's a big continent, of course, and there we focus on a couple of hubs. Among these is our Indian hubs like Bangalore, and in ASEAN it's mainly Jakarta. We are doing a couple of activities in Beijing and China as well, and Hong Kong. But for ASEAN, it's Jakarta. So, and we have delegation trips, and as I told, I've been already 3 times in a row, 16, 17, and 18, also in Jakarta with a delegation, in combination with other visits of Bangalore, Manila, and Singapore. So it's always a mixed group. So that's the delegation trip, and the highlight of the year is the Asia Berlin Summit that takes place in October, September, or May. It depends. We had to postpone it twice because of Corona, and it took place in October this year and September last year, where we invite also our guests from Asia to come over to Berlin and to talk about the main important trends and to find possibilities for connecting and collaboration in Berlin, to find partners for collaboration, not only among startups, but also investors, corporates, research institutes, scientific organizations, and also the governmental organizations. So in the case of Berlin, it's the state and city of Berlin. And of course, the federal state of Germany. For Indonesia, it's Indonesia and the city of Jakarta that are our interesting partners.
Okay, since you've touched about the Asia Berlin program, what can be exchanged mutually between two regions, especially when it comes to point of view in Berlin in terms of knowledge or skill or technology? What can be exchanged mutually between two regions?
So it's always what we call best practice exchange. So it's everything. So it's knowledge, it's technology, it's markets. So of course you don't exchange markets, but you can offer a market access to a company. But of course you can have really cooperation projects. So where startups from Berlin and Indonesia do together a workshop or project to invent something new or to adapt the product. The products that are used in Indonesia are different. Most of them are different to the products that are used in Germany. So you have to adapt the product to a specific market, and it's good to have a partner in that market to do so, because otherwise you will have the wrong product for a big market. And of course, Indonesia for us is a big market. ASEAN is a bigger market. European Union is also a big market. So it's worth to consider to scale into these markets, and having always in mind a partner for cooperation that may be another startup or an investor or corporate whatsoever. Also, corporate is interesting for scaling. We have with SAP and Siemens, we have two corporates on board that are quite active in Indonesia as well. And to scale from a startup perspective through a corporate is also a very interesting perspective. So lots of possibilities to exchange knowledge and innovation capacities and to combine it. And I think the idea of combining the brightest brains in Indonesia and Germany, that's one of the ideas of Asia Berlin.
So as we know, talking about the podcast program, of course, there is the program under a Smart Change project, a partnership between the city government of Jakarta and city government of Berlin with funding by the EU. So what are the aspirations behind the Smart Change project from Berlin's point of view, of course?
So one, of course, it's what is the main purpose of this program is capacity building. So it's a project under Europe Aid, which is capacity building in developing countries. So to strengthen the smart city competence and the entrepreneurial and startup competence within our twin city, Jakarta. That's the main goal of what we are wanting to achieve with Smart Change. And then, of course, the cooperation aspect for me is always the most important in international cooperation. So it's not just knowledge exchange of best practices, but it's cooperation that should be at the end. So that means that we hope that in the sector of smart city and startups, also the city of Jakarta is interested and will go on with the cooperation with Berlin. So not just learning or capacity building, but also at the end and in the process, having shared programs, having kind of in the startup sector, exchange of startups, cooperation of startups, or investments, as I explained before, so that there is at the end of the project and after the project, and that's even more important, that we have a kind of common ecosystem between Jakarta and Berlin, so that the startups from Berlin are using Jakarta to expand to Indonesia and ASEAN, and vice versa. Jakarta's startups use Berlin to expand to Germany and the European Union.
One of the big things coming from Smart Change next year is the construction of an innovation hub called the Future City Hub Jakarta. So what is your expected outcome in building this innovation hub in Jakarta?
So we would like to create a very lively space where people interact, meet, a kind of forum. So a very lively place to meet, to chat, to discuss, always connected to Berlin. Of course, that's my idea as well, to have the Berlin dimension always in this place. So it's to have to see the hub of Jakarta interconnected globally, so that people who are interested in internationalization, they find the opportunity to connect to Berlin through the hub as well. So that would be the idea, my idea for the hub that will be opened next year, and hopefully it will go on for the next 20 years, connecting Berlin to Jakarta.
So talking about your point of view once again, from your experience, what are some insightful lessons learned or best practices from successful innovation hubs you have or you guys have in Berlin?
So that's the Motion Lab in Berlin, and it's the Drivery in Berlin. The Motion Lab is a more kind of working lab. So as the name says, that where you really can, you have work spaces, you have machines where you can produce the pilots, prototypes, for in the mobility sectors. We have also in the AI field, we have now two kind of hubs we are going to create. One is with the public support, the other one is a purely private one, where you want to connect the stakeholders in the area of artificial intelligence, because that's also a very important topic for driving innovation in Berlin. And then again, we have some accelerators who very much specialize on internationalization. For example, the Beta House, that's also a cooperation with Australia, and the landing pad for Korea. We have the Silicon Alley, which is also very much internationally connected. The Factory Berlin, which is quite famous. So there, they all these spaces are looking for giving the opportunity for a purpose that's going beyond sharing desks.
So as your closing statement towards our topic today, Dr. Rainer, what is it going to be?
I would like to share my vision of a globally interconnected startup ecosystem, to share my vision about Asia Berlin as a platform to combine the brightest brains, also to solve the relevant questions of our world together. So especially related also on impact topics. That's important for me as well, that we're not just looking for getting more money, but also to solve real problems, as we do also with the smart city topic. So real problems of the people, but also of course in rural areas, and to food supply, energy supply, renewable energies. So finding solutions for these topics, waste topics, water quality topics. These are topics we should more consider in our international cooperation.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. The conversation is really inspirative and enlightening, and I hope that I can see you soon, hopefully not virtually.
I hope to see you soon as well. And if you want to stay in contact, also the audience, you can contact me on LinkedIn. You have my name, and if you want to know more about our startup ecosystem, we have a startup map Berlin. You will find it online, and of course on Asia Berlin, we have asia.berlin also online. So this will be the links where you find more information to get in contact or to know more about what's happening here in Berlin, and especially in the context of our cooperation with Jakarta.
So that is going to be our last episode of Future City Talks this year, and we're going to have another episode next year. Hopefully, I'm crossing my finger. And thank you for joining me, all of the hosts or the program for the last few months. And once again, my name is Wiki Adrian. See you next year on the next program. Bye.